After inexplicably transforming into Sophia from hundreds of years ago, my mind was filled not only with her memories of the past decade but also with an old, familiar voice.
If you want to become Mulan again, you must marry your true love.
If I hadn't disguised myself as a man to join the army, this might not have been so difficult. Which young girl doesn't dream of romance? But after living and eating with various men for years in the military, and fully understanding the saying, "Men's words are often deceitful," I had no interest in marriage.
Moreover, marrying my true love seems even more challenging.
So, I decided to accept my fate. Since I was here, I might as well settle down in this small village in the kingdom of you. But I forgot that in history, Sophia was a great beauty.
Even though I was bedridden, the matchmakers proposing marriage were so numerous that they could break down the door.
Faced with so many suitors, I decided to end my feigned illness early. After all, during the war between the kingdoms of Yu and Wu, Sophia was used by King Harold as a beauty trap to ensnare King Richard, and she met a tragic end.
Accepting fate is one thing, but accepting death is another.
Although I had no interest in marriage, I had some ideas about surviving in these chaotic times. The first step was to strengthen my body.
But this body is truly weak. After just a few steps, I can't help but want to clutch my chest.
However, I restrained this urge. I couldn't stand this gesture now. Thinking about it reminded me of the foolish scholar who had scared me with the same gesture hundreds of years ago.
Utterly embarrassing.
In the courtyard, just as I finished carving a wooden sword, Sophia's parents arrived from the market.
Dear, why are you out of bed?
Her parents were accompanied by a donkey that seemed oddly intelligent, its small eyes expressive and familiar.
And this? He eyed the wooden sword in my hand.
Father, Mother, I felt quite well today, so I decided to come out for a walk.
Oh, I heard that sword dancing is popular in the capital and is good for health, so I thought I'd give it a try.
If it truly helps, that would be wonderful.
Unexpectedly, the donkey nudged its head against my chest.
What on earth? I swung the wooden sword reflexively at the cheeky donkey.
Then I heard the donkey whimper, and the sound transformed into human speech in my ears.
Mulan. It's me. I am your fiancé, Edward.
What? After sending Mr. and Mrs. Johnson away, Edward and I stared at each other in the courtyard.
Who exactly are you?
I am your fiancé. The one granted by the Emperor.
No wonder the donkey seemed so familiar. Those coquettish eyes were exactly like that of the troublesome Edward. But with a donkey's body, there was no need for such bashful looks. I lowered my head, unable to look directly.
Mulan, you don't believe me? The Emperor granted our marriage, and you fainted with joy. Do you remember?
Brother. I fainted from fright, not joy. Suppressing the urge to sharpen my sword and deal with the donkey, I looked at Edward again, still struggling to accept the bizarre reality before me. Why are you here? And why have you turned into a donkey?
After you fainted, the national advisor said that to save you, I had to follow you back in time. You are my betrothed, and for you, I would brave any danger. So the advisor performed a ritual, and here I am. As for this form, it's a long story.
No! Make it short!
Oh, well! I seem to have gained the ability to transform.
It turned out that Edward followed me back over 400 years and, for some unknown reason, transformed into an animal during the day.
Initially, I became a snail. Because I moved too slowly, I wished before sleep to move faster. The next day, I turned into a horse.
Looking at his donkey face and body, I doubted his reputation as the top scholar. Clearly a donkey, how could he think he was a horse?
Being a horse was too conspicuous. Walking on the streets, those young ladies kept wanting to pet my head. It's inappropriate for a man with a fiancée to be touched like that. So after a day, I didn't want to be a horse anymore. Fortunately, the next day I became a donkey.
Should I praise you for your pure and loyal heart? And also, what's so proud about being a donkey? I turned away, looking up at the sky in exasperation. Mulan, who prides herself on loyalty and filial piety, what did I do wrong to deserve such punishment from the heavens? And also, why does Edward have special abilities after coming back in time, while I have nothing but chest pain? After a moment of silence, I asked again.
How did you know I was Mulan? I've completely changed my appearance.
Maybe because I have some special abilities. To me, you still look the same, just a bit thinner, a bit fairer, and even more beautiful.
So, in his eyes, my appearance hadn't changed much. I was used to being praised for my bravery, but being complimented on my looks by someone, by Sam, no less, made me feel a bit uncomfortable. Seeing my furrowed brows and silence, Sam started rambling again.
General Mulan, as they say, marry a wife, follow the wife. I am your betrothed, so it's only right that I accompany you. You don't need to be so moved. General Mulan, don't you think we are destined? The national advisor told me he couldn't guarantee sending me back successfully, but look, not only did I come back, but I also ended up directly in your hometown in such a vast country. General Mulan, I think calling you General feels a bit distant. How about I call you Mulan from now on?
Shut up. The marriage was decreed by the Emperor. I never agreed to it.
Sam looked aggrieved again.
Huh? But the Emperor's orders are hard to defy, and everyone in Wei knows about our engagement.
This is the Yu Kingdom from hundreds of years ago. I'm not Mulan, I'm Sophia.
The light in Sam's eyes instantly vanished.
Then, I don't know how long I'll be in this non-human form, or if I can ever return to Wei. Could you, Mulan, General Mulan, take care of me for a while?
His pitiful look stirred a bit of guilt in me. After all, it was partly because of me. I couldn't just ignore him completely.
All right.
A gentleman's word?
As a grand general, would I go back on my word? Scholars really do overthink things.
A promise is a promise.
Which room does the general sleep in? I'll find a place to sleep first. I usually turn back into a human around midnight, so I'll be disturbing you then.
What? What do you mean? You're not planning to sleep in the same room as me, are you?
Yes, otherwise if I suddenly turn into a human in the middle of the night and someone else sees, wouldn't that cause trouble? Don't worry, I'm not like those rough soldiers. I don't snore. The general wouldn't go back on their word, right?
Oh no. I made a mistake. Why did I try to be a gentleman? That afternoon, fire in my eyes, I grabbed my sword and rushed to the riverbank. 3 sets of sword techniques later, my chest loosened, and a sense of relief washed over me. The recent bizarre events had left me frustrated, but it became clearer that the original owner, Sophia, was physically weak due to neglect. On the way back, my mood soured only by Sam trailing behind.
General Mulan, you don't look well. Have you overexerted yourself with the sword practice? Do you need me to carry you back?
I shot him a sideways glance and didn't respond. I've only ever ridden horses in my life. I don't want to ride a donkey. When I got back, Mr. Johnson and Mrs. Johnson had already prepared dinner. I felt quite ashamed. This should have been my duty as their daughter.
Dear, you're back from your exercise? Come and eat.
Mr. Johnson went to take Sam to the backyard.
I don't know why, but this wild donkey keeps following us. It's actually quite useful. It can help with grinding grain. I'll get it some bran so it doesn't go hungry.
General Mulan, help! I don't want to eat bran.
I couldn't help but laugh. So even you, this foolish scholar, have moments of fear. Mr. Johnson, Mrs. Johnson, if you want the donkey to work well, you should feed it better food. How about giving it something good? After I said that, Sam's dinner was upgraded from bran to a bun. But seeing Mrs. Johnson's pained expression as she looked at that bun, and then at the very simple food on the table, I couldn't laugh anymore. Mr. Johnson, Mrs. Johnson, are we running out of food? Mr. Johnson didn't answer. Instead, he placed some pickled vegetables on my plate.
Dear, eat up. Your health has just started to improve. You need to eat more.
Although I had Sophia's memories, I hadn't really delved into them. After all, in my heart, I am Mulan, not Sophia. But now I remembered, to treat the original Sophia's illness, her family had indeed become increasingly impoverished over the years. I thought, besides strengthening my body, I also needed to help the Sophia family out of their predicament. Thinking about this, I couldn't sleep that night. But apart from some martial arts skills, I really had nothing else to offer. And with this frail body, I couldn't even fully utilize those skills. It would take some time before I could use them to earn some money. As I turned over once more, I suddenly noticed a slick, well-built man lying on the floor beneath my bed. Anna hadn't even made a sound before the man covered her mouth with his hand.
General Mulan. Don't shout. It's me, Edward.
Oh my. Sam had turned back into a human.
Where are your clothes?
Edward, hugging his chest pitifully, replied.
Well, I wasn't wearing any during the day either.
In the moonlight streaming through the window, I got a good look at Edward and couldn't help but feel a bit stunned. He was completely different from the soldiers I had seen in the camp. His long hair reached his waist, with strands that shimmered softly. His lips were red, his teeth white, his shoulders broad, and his waist slim. He had the necessary muscles, not overly bulky but certainly not lacking. He wasn't as frail as I had imagined. And he was quite good-looking.
Cover up.
I turned my head away and threw a small blanket from the bed at him. He responded with an "oh," and suddenly asked.
General Mulan, may I ask you a question?
Speak.
Then I heard Edward softly say,
Why is your face red, General?
Blushing? Impossible. I've seen all kinds of men. I quickly reached up to touch my face and, sure enough, it felt a bit warm. While I was doubting myself, I heard Edward chuckle softly.
Don't think too much, General. Get some rest.
I closed my eyes, clenched my fists, and indeed couldn't focus on making money anymore. All I could think about was, he's really annoyingly fair-skinned and really annoyingly bothersome. Before long, I fell asleep. The next day, I got up before dawn. After seeing Mr. Johnson and Mrs. Johnson off to work, I asked the neighbor to help load the stone mill onto Sam's back.
General Milan, what are you planning?
Sophia's family is struggling. A scholar like you should understand the concept of reciprocation, right?
I saw Sam's hooves tremble a bit.
You mean?
That's right, we're going to the market to earn some food.
At that time, the market was still quite free and loose. You could set up a stall anywhere there was space. The nearby vendors were mostly kind-hearted. Seeing me setting up a stall, they helped unload the stone mill with great effort. Once the mill was set up, I started performing sword dances along the street. I was selling my skills, keeping fit, and attracting customers for Sam's mill services all at once. After a few days, business gradually picked up, and my chest pain issues also eased considerably. Mr. Johnson and Mrs. Johnson were overjoyed when they found out and started giving Sam more refined food, fearing they might neglect this lucky donkey. Everyone was satisfied, except for Sam.
General Milan, perhaps you could also get me some ink and paper. My landscape paintings are quite good and might fetch some money.
I thought about it and agreed. The next day, I spent a considerable amount of money on ink and silk. But that grand landscape painting ended up with no buyers at all. Ha! Truly, a scholar's skills are of no use. Seeing my disdainful look, Sam was quite disheartened. To quickly earn back the money. Sophia. You're really crossing the line now. The angry shout made both Sam and me feel a shiver down our spines. The voice was deep but carried a hint of playful reproach. I looked up and saw it was Daisy.
Daisy. What's going on?
You always clutch your chest dramatically, and we've finally learned to mimic it somewhat. Now you don't do it anymore and keep practicing that wooden sword dance, which is so hard to learn. Are you doing this on purpose?
Oh dear. Daisy's imitation is real? Seeing me in a daze, Daisy's eyes began to well up with tears, and her chubby hands trembled as they moved towards her chest.
Oh no. Please don't. Of course not. If you don't believe me, I'll teach you personally starting tomorrow.
Really?
Suddenly, 4 or 5 other girls appeared besides Daisy.
Really?
Charge them, General. We can't teach for free.
Good point. A scholar indeed knows how to calculate. After giving Sam an appreciative look, I quickly added.
It's true, but this sword technique is a secret meant for health and fitness.
Health?
Isn't the focus supposed to be fitness? Before I could react, my hands were already filled with coins. Who said Daisy isn't beautiful? I think she's extremely beautiful. Thus, a few more girls joined the daily fitness routine. I felt quite good about it, as if I were back in the days of being an instructor in the army. However, I never expected the difference between training male and female soldiers to be so vast.
All right, let's start with the basics. We'll practice along the street so you can get used to the movements.
Practicing swords in public is ungraceful. We refuse.
I had to compromise and teach them in the backyard of one of the girls' pickle shops.
Fine, we'll practice here. Now, grab your wooden swords.
These wooden swords are unattractive. Can we use something else like willow branches or fans?
Finally, when we started the actual training, it took less than half a cup of tea before the girls began to wobble and fall.
Sophia, how long do we have to hold this dance?
These training clothes are so ugly. Do we really have to wear them?
I'm so tired, Sophia. I can't go on, I need a break.
That familiar chest pain feeling, it's back again. Night fell. In my room, I lay on the bed, staring at the few coins that could be exchanged for half a year's worth of food, feeling torn. Taking someone's money means solving their problems. But I felt incapable of leading the group of women warriors headed by Daisy. Yet, returning the money pained me greatly. At that moment, Edward, now in human form, sat on the floor and asked with concern.
General, what troubles you so?
I sighed, feeling the weight of my dilemma.
You wouldn't understand.
Understand what?
Understand how difficult it is to lead this group of women warriors.
What's so difficult about it?
I couldn't help but sneer.
You're a scholar. Could you possibly know how to train soldiers?
Edward's smile was as bright as the full moon, almost making me lose my composure.
If I can help you train this group of women warriors, what will you do for me?
Name it.
Marry me?
I kicked at him, but he easily caught my foot. It was then I noticed that after a month of grinding, his muscles had become much stronger. I was about to use all my strength for another kick to show him that I was not someone he could covet.
I was joking. Please allow me to change into another form.
Thinking of his recent hard work and the fact that my body was getting stronger, I figured I could find other ways to earn money. If he didn't want to be a donkey, so be it. I retracted my foot and nodded.
Fine.
The next day, I followed Edward's advice and told Daisy and the others.
Ladies, next month is the annual Cold Food Festival in Juluo Village. I heard that King Harold's advisors will come here to select beauties. If chosen, you will become famous. I am only telling you few about this, so.
Before I could finish, Daisy, who had complained the loudest about being tired yesterday, was already practicing her horse stance with pursed lips. When I returned, I asked Edward why the title of Beauty of You was so appealing to these girls.
Why is the title of Beauty of You so appealing to these girls?
Because Juluo has Sophia, who is beautiful without knowing it. Everyone who sees her wants to become her.
Although I roughly understood, for some reason, my foot itched, and I wanted to kick him.
But if they are really chosen, wouldn't that harm them?
After all, the original Sophia was chosen but did not meet a good end.
Innate charm is something they can't train for.
What do you mean?
Most likely, the one chosen will still be you. But don't worry, with me here, I will help you change your fate.
But as I looked at him, for some reason, my foot itched again. This time, I didn't hold back. With one kick, he turned into a bee. I quickly withdrew my foot, fearing it might sting me.
Oh, it's not a bee but a kingfisher. I've never seen one like this before.
Yes, its unique feature is that it can travel hundreds of miles a day. Its small size allows it to scout far ahead for us.
I realized this talented individual had quite a few uses. He became more pleasing to my eyes.
I've tested my flying ability and found it satisfactory. I must depart tonight. Edward has observed the stars for several nights. The chosen one is on their way. To avoid any mishaps, Mulan, please be cautious in my absence.
Thank you, Edward. After all, we were strangers, having only met briefly during the arranged marriage.
It was unexpected that he would come back in time with me. Now, for my sake, he had transformed into a bird, showing his loyalty and courage. After Edward left, I managed to convince Mr. and Mrs. Johnson that the wild donkey had escaped. In the following days, without Edward's constant chatter, I started to feel a bit uneasy. However, my years of military experience made it difficult to rely entirely on one person.
So, a few days later, I suppressed those strange feelings. While leading Daisy and others in physical training, I began my self-rescue plan.
Thus, it was me who stood under the scorching sun, me who lifted heavy stones, and me who ate beans desperately 3 times a day.
I wanted to get tanned. I wanted to get strong. I wanted to say goodbye to my frail self.
I didn't believe that a tanned and robust me could still be chosen by King Harold's advisors. Unexpectedly, my actions led Daisy and others to mistakenly believe this was my secret method to become slim and beautiful.
Is this how Mulan stays fit and beautiful?
They became competitive, not only practicing swordsmanship more diligently but also secretly eating various beans at home. However, the beans were really hard to eat. One girl, unable to stomach them, cried at home.
Father, I can't eat these beans anymore.
Maybe soaking and grinding the beans will make them more palatable, just like making pickled vegetables.
Unexpectedly, by chance, he created a new food, tofu. To thank me, he gave me a handful of coins.
Thank you, Mulan. May I name the tofu after you?
I never imagined that tofu would be made this way.
Later, this Sophia tofu spread across the country. Somehow, it became known as Utofu Sophia, and people, not understanding, started referring to beautiful women selling tofu as Utofu Sophia. But that's a story for another time. At this moment, I only knew that Daisy was getting slimmer and Girl A's chest was becoming fuller. Everyone had a rosy complexion and looked vigorous.
Didn't they look much better than the sickly original Sophia?
The families of these girls sent generous gifts.
In the past 2 months, not only has my daughter's figure improved, but her minor ailments and irregular cycles have also been cured.
Word spread quickly, and more girls wanted to practice swordsmanship with me. I was busy but felt a sense of accomplishment. The women's army, which started with Daisy and 5 others, had now grown to 60 members. At this time, King Harold's advisor, Oliver, finally appeared on the streets of Juluo village. Accompanying him was that annoying bird, Sam.
Mulan,
Oliver's appearance immediately drew the attention of all the young ladies. With his strikingly handsome features and impressive 6-foot stature, he exuded an air of confidence and elegance. His piercing gaze caused many of the girls to blush wherever it landed. His attire was distinctly different from the simple clothes of Zhu Luo village, clearly marking him as someone from a more sophisticated place.
Sophia, is this the man you said the king sent to choose beauties?
Yes, that's him.
I nodded absent-mindedly, then glared at Edward, who was perched happily on Oliver's shoulder, feeling increasingly annoyed.
Is this what he calls gathering intelligence for me? This is outright betrayal, isn't it? Trusting a man is like expecting a pig to climb a tree.
I couldn't be bothered with the commotion and turned to head home. With Oliver's arrival, my time was running short. Although I had made all the necessary preparations, I couldn't help but feel a bit unsettled. Whenever I closed my eyes, the image of that foolish bird Edward would involuntarily appear in my mind. When I opened my eyes, it was gone. Closed them again, and there it was. Open, close, close, open. After several rounds of this, I finally lost my temper. I kicked at the bird's shadow, only to see a sleek, slippery man roll twice on the floor. It was Edward.
Are you hurt?
Just as I was about to kick him again, I noticed his arm was bleeding. I quickly stopped and asked in a low voice.
Yes.
He turned his head and collapsed into my arms, his face pale. I then saw that the wound on his arm was quite severe, and my kick had made it bleed even more. I recognized the wound type immediately. It was an arrow wound. I tore a clean strip from my inner garment and began to bandage his arm.
What happened?
There's no time. The arrow was poisoned. Sophia, before I go, I have one last wish. Can you fulfill it?
In the darkness, I couldn't see his expression clearly, but I felt a tightness in my chest, a pain unlike any I had felt before.
Tell me.
My greatest regret in life is not being able to marry you, Sophia. Before I go, could you grant me this wish?
I held his hand tightly, silent for a long time, fighting the urge to kick him again, and finally pushed him away.
I'm a warrior, but I'm not stupid.
Sophia, your skills haven't diminished. I almost got crippled by your kick.
Back then? Ha! When I was fighting on the battlefield, you were probably just a frail scholar. How could you know my prowess back then? That kick was only a fraction of my strength. Don't even think about conning me.
I said it like that, but seeing that he still had the energy to be glib, I was relieved and then tore a strip of cloth to bandage him. At this moment, I understood why he couldn't fly back earlier to deliver the message. While I was bandaging him, Edward started rambling about what had happened in the past few days.
General Mulan, you have no idea how perilous this journey was for me. There was a highly skilled guard by Oliver's side. I barely got within 3 feet of Oliver before an arrow was shot at me. If I hadn't flown quickly, I would have been done for.
But rest assured, General, I am resourceful and managed to escape. I even got Oliver to escort me back to Zulu village.
I heard that in rural areas, there's no medicine for wounds, and close ones can blow on it to ease the pain. Mulan, could you blow on it for me? Ouch!
I tied the knot tightly and said with a forced smile.
Call me Mulan again, and see what happens?
My apologies.
After covering him with a blanket, I asked.
Does Oliver know your true identity? And your special abilities?
Of course not. Such extraordinary skills should not be known to outsiders. I spoke to him in bird form, making him believe I was a divine bird.
I nodded in agreement. If Edward wanted, he could naturally speak human language. Usually, he feared being seen by others, and since I could understand his various sounds, he often spoke to me in donkey or bird language.
Weren't you just on his shoulder? How did you come back? Did he notice you?
As a divine bird, having Oliver bring me to see you was normal. He is waiting outside now, expecting you to meet him. I told him you are a divine general sent from the heavens, and if you lead the army, the kingdom of Wu will surely prevail.
My heart skipped a beat. I had originally thought of persuading Oliver to let me lead the troops. Unexpectedly, Edward had already understood my thoughts and secured the position of chief commander for me. In the darkness, I went alone to meet Oliver. For some reason, as I approached him, I felt a strange sense of destiny. He saw me and smiled broadly, then bowed.
If not for the divine bird's prophecy, I would never have connected a girl with the beauty of a sinking fish to a valiant general.
I lightly weighed the wooden sword in my hand, then gathered my strength in my abdomen and swiftly struck at the tree stump beside Oliver. The stump split in two with a crack.
Now, can you connect the two?
It was my mistake to judge by appearance.
I sheathed the wooden sword and said indifferently,
No matter.
On the 8th of July, it is auspicious to travel. Please settle your family affairs. At this time and place, I will send someone to pick you up.
All right. Thank you, Lord Oliver.
Seeing that everything was settled, I turned to leave. But then Oliver suddenly asked,
I heard you once suffered from chest pains. Do they still trouble you at night?
His question puzzled me. I thought he was concerned that my health might affect the military campaign, so I patted my chest and said,
Rest assured, my lord, it's no longer an issue.
He was stunned for a moment, then smiled with relief.
That's good.
When I returned to the room, Edward had not left but had already reverted to bird form. I told him about the departure on the 8th of July. He seemed indifferent, blinking his tiny sesame-like eyes and asking an irrelevant question.
Isn't Oliver quite handsome?
He is quite handsome. Why? Are you jealous?
Edward didn't answer, silently turning his head and leaving. It was the 8th day of July when I handed over all the money I had earned to Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. I hoped this would ensure their well-being in their later years. The unpredictability of the battlefield between Wu and Yu made me uncertain of my fate. To avoid suspicion, Oliver claimed that the palace needed maidservants, thus summoning me. Unexpectedly, even the newly slimmed-down Daisy was selected.
Sophia, you are really something. You said you weren't interested in the beauty selection, but here you are, going to the palace.
I looked at this silly girl, not knowing what to say. To protect her, I went to negotiate with Oliver.
The divine bird originally said it would accompany you. If you take Daisy away as well, it would be hard for me to explain to the king.
I understood Oliver's intention. He wanted to keep a hostage to ensure I wouldn't desert. In my dilemma, Edward made the choice for me.
You go ahead and take that silly girl. I, Edward, am resourceful and exceptionally talented. Even in the palace, I can surely live freely. If you win, come and get me. If you lose, I'll sneak out to find you, and then we can find a secluded place to live in peace.
I couldn't help but smile. He had such confidence in me, not fearing that I might fall in battle, leaving him to find only my remains. But this was good, at least he would be safe. Following Edward's advice, I took Daisy as my personal maidservant. 3 days later, with her and the king's decree, we headed to Lisa.
Sad all the way, Daisy cried and complained, blaming me for ruining her title as a beauty and her prospects of wealth and glory. Annoyed by her tantrums, I got off the carriage, tossed the reins to her.
Fine, fine. If you're not afraid of being taken down by the palace beauties, go back now.
Surprisingly, Daisy stopped her fussing and stared at me. Serious, why aren't you going back? Serious, because I don't want to meet my end. Shocked, then where are you going? Serious, to fight in the war. Terrified, what? You? Oh my. So all this time when you were teaching us to practice martial arts, it was actual combat skills, not dance moves? Serious? Oh dear. So after all this time, these girls thought I was teaching them some flowery ornamental moves? Great, now my chest hurts again. Relieved seeing my darkened expression, she suddenly hugged me tightly. Serious, let go. Sad, no. What if you disappear the moment I let go? Serious, I won't run. Let go, or I can't drive the carriage. Hopeful as the sun set in the distance, Daisy continued to chatter. Cheerful, actually, I noticed you've changed from before, but I kind of like you this way. And also, that donkey of yours is quite strange. Can it understand human speech? Cheerful, I suspect it might have feelings for you. Shouting, hey, Sophia, can you handle this? The carriage is about to tip over. Serious, Edward likes me? Wasn't he here because of the Emperor's decree? I shook my head, not daring to think further. Serious, upon arriving at Lisa, I took the roster from the Deputy General and found that only 1,000 soldiers were left for me. Serious, the Deputy General looked at me, then at Daisy, with a defeated expression. Serious, I knew what he was thinking. The king sending a woman to lead the troops was akin to waving a white flag. Angry before I could speak, Daisy, hands on her hips, angrily said, Angry, what are you looking at? Never seen a woman fight? Unfriendly, the others responded with disdain. Excited, Daisy swiftly drew a long sword from a soldier's waist and skillfully twirled it, raising an eyebrow at them. Cheerful, see that? Our general could do this at the age of 3. Serious, when I taught her, I never imagined she would use it to establish my authority at such a crucial moment. Serious, seizing the opportunity, I ordered the Deputy General to gather the entire army for a roll call. Serious, I also announced a hefty reward. Anyone who could defeat me would receive 100 gold coins. Serious, to win over these seasoned soldiers, there was no other way but to prove myself through combat. Serious, after 10 consecutive victories, the Deputy General's face finally showed some color. Friendly, during a break when Daisy handed me water, the Deputy General, as if just remembering, asked for my name. Curious, what is your name, General? Serious, my surname is Hua, given name Qing. You can call me General Milan. Serious, after a few more rounds, no one dared to challenge me. Excited, I plunged my sword deep into the wooden stake on the training platform and pointed to the sky. Shouting, the Battle of the Rivers has dragged on for too long without a breakthrough. Defending our homeland knows no gender. If you're dissatisfied, then break through soon. I will gladly relinquish my position as general. Serious, the Deputy General scanned the crowd, then knelt and shouted. Shouting, General Milan is mighty. Excited, the chorus of agreement grew louder and louder. Shouting, glory to you, victory to you. Hopeful, the morale was finally ignited. Serious, in the following days, the Deputy General and I meticulously studied the terrain and decided to launch a counterattack in 7 days. Serious, with our numbers, a prolonged battle was out of the question. We had to strike swiftly and decisively. Excited, but to our utter surprise, when we charged towards Wu's capital with a do-or-die spirit, we found the Wu army exhausted, their soldiers scattered, and the gates unguarded, nearly collapsing on their own. Relieved, well then, did we just win without a fight?
Just as I was patrolling the capital with my soldiers, confirming that King Richard was indeed gone and the Wu army had scattered and posed no threat, I could only ascend the city tower with my even more perplexed deputy and hoist the flag of Yu. At that moment, I saw the figures of the Yu army approaching from a distance. As they drew nearer, the first person I saw was Oliver. The ceremonial entourage behind him was so grand and imposing that I didn't need to guess to know it was King Harold. Could it be that King Harold personally led the troops and defeated the Wu kingdom? But where was Edward? Why wasn't that annoying bird around?
General, the king's entourage has reached the city gates. We should go welcome him.
My deputy's reminder snapped me out of my thoughts. We descended the city tower and, after removing my armor, I was finally allowed to approach the king.
Ha ha ha. The first female general of you, truly extraordinary.
It was a bit awkward. After all, I had hardly done anything.
The king is destined by the heavens, naturally attracting heroes to serve him.
This is why I dislike dealing with these civil officials. Their flattery is truly chilling. Speaking of civil officials, where on earth is that bird Edward? I was getting a bit agitated. After another round of praises, King Harold finally left, satisfied. Oliver stayed behind to clean up the aftermath. I hurried forward, stopping him to ask,
"Where is he?"
I'm sorry, we're still looking for him.
"What do you mean by still looking?"
This victory over the Wu Kingdom is largely thanks to Edward, who risked his life using his unique skills to successfully eliminate King Richard. However, I had a gentleman's agreement with him not to report this to the king, so only my personal guard is searching for him, which is why it's taking longer.
"What do you mean? Are you saying you knew about Edward all along? And that he wasn't really a divine bird?"
Yes. I knew the mission to eliminate King Richard was extremely dangerous, but I still sent Edward. For the sake of the people of you, I had no other choice.
I finally understood everything. No wonder Oliver so easily let a woman like me lead the troops. He never cared whether I could command them or not. That's why there were less than 1,000 soldiers left in the camp, to coordinate with the strategy of feinting in the east and attacking in the west. No wonder Edward had me take Daisy away but didn't accompany me. Perhaps taking Daisy was to make his solo mission more reasonable. Edward had meticulously planned everything, truly changing fate for me. But if you were so wise and talented, if you told me to come back for you after winning, then where are you? Why don't you come out already?
"Edward! Get out here, you coward!"
I rushed up the city tower, shouting angrily at the Wu capital. But inside and outside the city, I didn't hear that nagging voice respond to me. I searched the entire night but couldn't find the slippery Edward. Could it be that he passed away, and before he could revert to his human form, that's why I couldn't find his body? Thinking of this, the pain in my heart was so intense that I couldn't stand upright. I finally couldn't help but clutch my chest with both hands, and then, thinking of this gesture, thinking of our first meeting in the temple, I couldn't hold back my tears.
"Edward, if I had known this would happen, I would definitely. What would I definitely do?"
I found myself at a loss for words.
"Edward, weren't you the greatest scholar of Northern Way? Can you not pass away and teach me what to say?"
Just when my heart was aching unbearably, I suddenly heard a familiar voice.
"Emily, I'm in so much pain."
"Edward? I almost thought I was hearing things."
"Yes, Emily, I'm in so much pain. Please help me."
Ignoring his way of addressing me, I wiped my tears with my hand, then straightened up and looked around. But within 3 feet, there was no sign of any living creature.
"Look down, take another look. I'm on the leaf right in front of you."
A leaf? I looked down at a 4-leaf clover by my feet and saw a tiny spider perched on it.
"Ed, spider?"
"Yes, Emily, you finally found me."
Oh my. I didn't say anything out loud, did I?
"Yes, Emily, actually I have another ability. I can hear your thoughts."
Oh no. Doesn't that mean?
"Emily, let me teach you. You can say, if you had known today, you would have married Edward sooner."
Shut up.
Okay, Emily, but don't blush.
Ah. I looked up at the sky speechlessly. I, Mulan, pride myself on being loyal and filial. What did I do wrong to deserve such punishment from the heavens?
Can I say one more thing?
Your mouth is not under my control.
Maybe it's because, when you were 16, you saved a boy in a village and teased him, saying if he were a girl, you would marry him. That boy had nightmares for years, always thinking he had a peculiar affection. Until the story of Mulan joining the army in place of her father became known.
Oh my. You can't be that boy, can you?
Yes, Emily, so you have to take responsibility for me.
Then the marriage decree from His Majesty.
I requested it.
And my transformation into Sophia.
Purely accidental.
This is absurd. But looking at Edward the spider, with his legs crushed and only his body remaining, I finally reached out and gently picked him up. Fortunately, he wasn't gone.
Emily, where are you taking me?
Don't ask the obvious.
All right, then let me say it. Mulan, I have loved you for a long, long time. Will you marry me?
Blushing, I nodded gently. After a dizzying moment, I found myself back on the day I returned triumphantly. In front of the majestic Guangda Hall, the ceremonial officer's words were passionate. I looked at Edward from afar in the crowd and happened to meet his sparkling eyes. He looked at me with a radiant smile, and I realized how handsome he was. When I heard the marriage decree again, I gladly accepted it.